Women's World is proudly brought to you by Telecom PNG. Telecom PNG, always there.
Hello, I am Miria N and welcome to this episode of Women's World. The Motu Koita Assembly, through its elections which were held late last year, saw the electing of 2 female representatives alongside its 14 male representatives that was sworn into the Motu Koita Assembly. Not only through these elections did it see the electing of 2 female representatives, but it also indicated the desire for change by the Motu Koita community. The Motu Koita Assembly is currently headed by Dadi Toka Jnr, who late last year, through the October elections of 2018, was elected as chairman of the Motu Koita Assembly, replacing his predecessor, Miria N Ikupu. The main aims of the Motu Koita Assembly are to improve the lives of the people of Motu Koitabu through the partnering with stakeholders, businesses, and other levels of government. A workshop organized by the Department of Pacific Affairs of the Australian National University was held in December last year to showcase the challenges faced by female contestants who contested for seats within the Assembly, yet to also share the experiences of the realities faced when contending as women in elections here in Papua New Guinea. Present were Dame Carol Kidu, a former female politician who served as a parliamentarian from 2002 to 2007, then from 2007 to 2012, together with female candidates who contested in the elections, together with leading political analysts from the Australian National University.
My name is Mea. My surname is Isaac, and I am the West Women's representative for the Motu Koita Assembly. I believe having to contest against men is not so hard, apart from the cultural barriers, but otherwise, because men are more understanding, and I believe that for us women, when we look up to another woman, sometimes we don't want to accept the fact that another woman has won over us. And it's very hard to accept that. But this election for me, it was great, but very, very challenging, because I was going up against the sitting member at that time. And I didn't know whether my platform was going to be influential, because this was my second time. The last time I lost by 12 votes, and I said, okay, if I lost by 12 votes, I'll make it, I win by 120 votes. And in fact, I won by quite a big margin. And if we had to be, we need to be influential. We need to be influential, also we need to be recognized. And I believe Motu Koita society is recognizing women because they've got women representatives in their assembly. And if the national parliament also recognized women, then maybe they would have women representatives within each of the provinces, the 22 provinces. And Motu Koitabu, I believe and strongly believe, is leading the way in that area, because they've got representatives, women representatives in the assembly who are going to be the voice of the women. They're going to be the voice of the young teenagers that are coming up, and also the children within the society. When I was sworn in and I walked out, a couple of my women folk and also men said, you know, you should have gone into the chairman's role. And I said, look, it's a big ask if I have to go for the chairman's role, because I need to know the assembly first. I'd rather start below and then work my way up. I'm not after the chairman's role because I don't have an interest in looking after the entire Motu Koita society. I'd rather look after the women, because we need to have women developed into a stage where they can become presidents, they can become managing directors, and we only have a few in Papua New Guinea. And we now don't have a women representative in the national parliament, and that's a very, very, it's a grave concern to me. And I hope that with us being in Motu Koita, we can be able to push that. It will be one of our agendas for the 2022 elections, to get women up into the national parliament. I believe that to become a politician, you don't have to start at a very young age, because at a young age, you're groomed. You're groomed first in your society, within the community, and then your society. And then when you go into the outer world, when you go into school, then you're going into the national world, into our Papua New Guinea. So it's there, then you start to learn about politics, because you start to have, you have a class captain. So that's where politics starts, probably within the community and the society as well, but within the schools is where you start. And yes, to the young women out there, if you want to be a politician, look at it very carefully. It's a very challenging and a tedious task, but also it's going to groom you to become a very good citizen, because once you are up there, you're looked upon by people, and you need to keep that status quo where, oh, I don't want to do something bad, and then, because people like to peek into your background. Yeah, like, movie stars and presidents, and look at, what's his name at this point in time, Donald Trump. Everyone's coming up with all sorts of things that are within his background, and it's a dirty game. But otherwise, don't let that dirty game deter you from it. Take the challenge and move on. Take it up, because it's going to be very satisfying, and it'll be fruitful. The benefits are going to be reaped later on.
You are watching Women's World. Please stay with us as we have more when we return. Welcome back. The Motu Koita Assembly is a public body which is elected by the people of Motu Koita, who are found within the nation's capital district villages, to actively and meaningfully represent and develop the nation's capital for the benefit of the people of Motu Koita. Therefore, having two female representatives within the assembly therefore means that the female views within the Motu Koita community will be better represented.
Dame Carol Kidu entered politics in 1997, standing as an independent candidate in the parliamentary elections, and was elected Member of Parliament for the Port Moresby South electorate. Although retiring from politics in July of 2012, through her past and extravagant journey executed through the world of politics, she continues to be a vocal supporter through the mentoring of other female leaders in the community and in the country.
I was in Parliament in a lucky time in some ways. I certainly would not like to stand now. The way politics is now going in Papua New Guinea, I would not like to stand now. The reality is, my first election, I was the widow of a recent widow of a very prominent, highly respected Papua New Guinean, Saburi Kidu. That definitely helped me to get in the first time. It would not get me in a second time, so I had to then focus very hard on working in the electorate to make sure I could win again. So I had that advantage of that, what we call the sympathy vote, that actually got me there the first time. And then it was up to me to try to work and prove myself. I would say also I was very strategic as a politician in some ways, in that knowing that to win again I had to be, it was a very hard thing. A lot of people don't win again. And I chose not to be a minister in my first term. Even if I'd been offered it, I wouldn't have taken it, because I thought the first thing was to focus on my electorate, get that going and get myself kind of settled in a bit. Once I did become a minister, I was very keen to have the ministry that nobody else wanted, because it was the things that interest me, but it was also an area that had had nothing done for a long time. So I could get noticed, because suddenly we were working on disability policies and early childhood policies, a whole lot of things that had never been done in this country. So I was working in an area that gave me prominence with people like yourselves in the media, yeah. And so I was lucky. But I worked hard. But certainly by first getting in, it was the sympathy vote that gave me that chance in the beginning. 20 women, I would say 20 brave women, because standing for elections in Papua New Guinea is not easy for anyone, and it's perhaps even harder for women. Today we haven't got the total number here, because some are away, a couple are sick and things. But I thought that, it'd be good to do a little bit of a diagnostic of what their experiences were and what's the way forward to get even greater involvement of women in the political voice of the Motu Koita. I'm probably pushing my own agenda a bit, but I'm sure a lot of the Motu Koita women would like that too. It'll be interesting to see with what the women come up with here, how it compares with the diagnostics from the national elections, which have always been done. There's never been one like this before for Motu Koita. Out of this too, in the second half of the program, we will be looking forward as to how we can get more and really meaningful participation of women in the Motu Koita Assembly. At present, they have a guaranteed 2 seats, which are voted only by women. Only women actually vote for those women. And there are many questions we'll be talking about in the second half about, is that the best possibility? Does that have some disadvantages when the men are not actually voting as well, the total population? We'll be looking at what are other possibilities to get more and more women's participation. We'll be looking at the Bougainville legislation 2016, which will go into effect in their next elections, where they've gone for parity at local level, where that means that there will be 50-50. Each electorate will have a man and a woman, and talk about all those possibilities and whether they are possible or not. So we'll be looking forward as well. Okay. I have political experience, but I don't have academic or research experience and the knowledge, but I've been involved with a program with ANU that has been doing election preparation for women for national level and local level, and diagnostics afterwards, and it's been an ongoing program. So I approached ANU whether they could come and do something with our Motu Koita Assembly, and I was very grateful that it was agreed to, and so ANU are working in partnership with the Motu Koita Assembly on this program, which will go on. The next 2 days will be for the elected members will be doing work as well. For the national level, and I think the local level too probably, and I don't know if the Motu Koita, are financial issues. To have an election is not cheap nowadays in Papua New Guinea. People expect food, they expect things that are part of the election process, so financially it's difficult. The cultural perceptions, it's an unfortunate one, because in reality women were powerful traditionally in Papua New Guinea. Right? They were very powerful. But the Western conceptual framework of this has kind of twisted it. The power was in the private sphere, and our challenge, for example, I know in our household in the village at Pari, the most powerful person was my mother-in-law, not my late husband. But she was the most powerful person, and in the private sphere. But when it goes into the public sphere, it's the men are the orators and the speakers. But if you analyze many places in Papua New Guinea, the power behind the scene is often women. Ask around. I can see these women nodding. Yeah. And the part of the problem is that trying to make that power and influence behind the scenes be acceptable in the public sphere. I mean, it happened in Western society a long time ago too, where it was regarded that the women's place was in the house and doing things. And it took a long time in the Western society to overcome that, and women be accepted in the public sphere. But to waste half of our population is just nonsense. We have equal brain power. We were given equal brain power. We have equal analytical power, and it is just crazy to not utilize that in our decision making of the nation. And I think it's very sad, absolutely sad, that we have not a single woman in national parliament now, not at all. And so it's a change process that is occurring to make it acceptable for women to be out in the public sphere, but I think we're making good progress. We haven't on the national sphere. We've gone backwards, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But in all other spheres, women are being accepted in leadership. But it's just this area of politics. If you go into the private sector, women are right at the top often. Even in public service, there's an increasing number of women who are heads of departments, and they have the Gesi policy and things like that. But it's this area of the politics, the ones who make the critical decisions for this nation, that it's a very hard barrier to crack. And yeah, I guess politics is about money, power, greed, all sorts of things, as well as we hope development.
Please stay with us as we have more after the break.
The election of women into the Motu Koita Assembly paves a way forward for other aspiring female leaders who believe they are worthy and able to contribute effectively to the development of our nation. This therefore sets a benchmark with the hope that other local level governments around the country may also follow suit.
Dame and Miria, the reason why I have decided to contest for the council seat rather than the women's seat was to ensure that I've seen what has happened in the last 20 or so years. That the council was dominated especially by men. So I had taken that the challenge to see that way forward, that if I would have been given that opportunity, I would have brought some changes, specifically in the Motu Koita Assembly. That was how I saw that it would be proper for me to take the challenge and meet up with the male counterparts to ensure that, because I have that, say, knowledge-based or the qualities that I have, I would be at par with my male counterparts. That's the way I saw that I would be one of those candidates that I had lifted my hand up to take up the challenge. Coming from a women perspective, we've just seen some sort of like questions that we have answered. To be in such a challenge, women, like in a PNG society, women should be seen at the backstage, but then we really need to ensure that that gender equality should be at par. Women should be at par with the male counterparts, so that we should really be delivering the services that is required by the community. So that was really how I saw the challenge. Women should be given that opportunity as well.
Very, very good experience running in these elections. This is my first time, and it was very challenging, exciting, and well, a bit confusing because women, they have a different kind of attitude when it comes to electing their leaders. They go from, they follow their own interests. But I think women being given the right to represent the women, it's a very, very good way forward for the women, especially the women of Motu Koita.
The ANU, the Department of Pacific Affairs in the Australian National University, has a program called the Women's in Leadership Support Program. This is funded through Pacific Women, who have their office here in Port Moresby, which is a DFAT-funded program. The program has been designed to try and support women candidates, both for the national elections and the LLG elections. And so this work, looking at the women candidates that contested the Motu Koita, is very much in line with what the program is aiming to do. And so that is why I'm here as a representative from Department of Pacific Affairs at ANU. As a researcher, I guess what we want to see is have a greater understanding of what they face, what the challenges are, how they can work to becoming elected the next time round, and seeing more success of women at this level. I mean, that's I guess what we're here for.
Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have found this episode of Women's World inspiring. Unfortunately, we have now reached the end of our program. If you would like to know more about our program, or if you believe there is a story you would like to share with us, please contact us through the link that is appearing on your screen now. Also by simply sending us a message on our Facebook page. Until next time, I am Miria N. Please join me on the next episode of Women's World.
Women's World was proudly brought to you by Telecom PNG. Telecom PNG, always there.